Welcome to the Westcity podcast. We hope you are encouraged by today's message. If you want to hear more podcasts, you can access them through the Westcity website found in the description link.
To let that lefty kind of thing happen, flow out. I was actually thinking this morning as we were worshipping that it's a rather obvious thing, but I'm alive. There's hope, right? The scripture says, look to the hills from where your hope comes. And there's some really good advice in that. There is hope. There really is. It's an affluent area, right? But the reality is that we all actually have valleys that we walk through. And whether we're, rich, poor, old, young, the reality is that we need to keep looking towards the hill where our hope comes from. Because our hope actually only comes from that one place. There's a lot of human hope. There's lots of stuff that we can do, and we'll talk a little bit about that this morning. But at the end of the day, our hope, the joy and the hope for a future that's worthwhile comes only from one place. Whoever we are this morning, whether we come from the mountaintops or the valleys, whatever your week's been like, I find that I have just as many problems on the mountaintop, to be honest, because I find that I get arrogant in about a minute when things are going well. Don't know about you, but I do. I find that self, the old man, I don't know, that's the way the Bible talks about it. The moment he gets a moment, he rises up again. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read some scripture. First of all, though, let me see if I can make this work. Oh, it's red and not green. Oh, the other thing I was going to say was don't stress too much. I know I've been on a lot. It's just that John's been really unwell, John Bergman. And so remember him in your prayers. He wasn't even able to speak at the conference this week. He was going to be really involved in a conference this week, just gone, and he's just so unwell. So remember that young man. You are what you love. We'll talk about it a little bit. Matthew 6 is the chapter we're looking at today. We've been looking at the Sermon on the Mount. We've called the series Practice Resurrection, so post-resurrection. How do we practice this resurrection life, to use Christian speak? And Matthew 6 has got a lot of stuff in it, and of course I can't hope to touch everything in it. So what I'm going to do is have a look at my take on some of the issues in Matthew 6, with the idea that really it's about Christian formation. I just want to suggest some things to think about and to pray about, I guess. And maybe as you come together in community this week, if you're in a house church, it would be something you can unpack this chapter in lots of different ways, because the Spirit is moving in all of us, both as individuals and as a community. That's how the Spirit is. And all of us will find something in these verses, I think. So I'm going to read a section of Matthew 6, just several verses, and a couple of them are going to come up on the screen. So let me just read it. I'm missing a couple of bits out. If you know Matthew 6 really well, you'll know that I'm missing a couple of bits out. But it's a large chapter, and I just wanted to get the sort of the atmosphere of the two sections. So the two sections in Matthew 6, one which is talking about a kind of a hypocrisy and religious observances, and the second part of the chapter is talking about thinking through finance and our worry sometimes about our financial futures. So of course it's much more than that, but let me just read these verses. So sit back just for a minute. From verse 1, make certain you do not perform your religious duties in public so that people will see what you do. If you do these things publicly, you will not have any reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give something to a needy person, don't make a big show of it, as the hypocrites do in the houses of worship in the streets. They do it so that people will praise them. I assure you, they have already been paid in full. I'm trying to get a scripture up. Brilliant timing. There we go. And I'll be paid in full. But when you help a needy person, do it in such a way that even your closest friend will not know about it. Then it will be a private matter, and your Father who sees what you do in private will reward you. When you pray, do not be like the hypocrites. They love to stand up and pray in the houses of worship and on the street corners so that everyone will see them. I assure you, they have already been paid in full. But when you pray, go to your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what you do in private will reward you. When you pray, don't use a lot of meaningless words as the pagans do, who think that their gods will hear them because their prayers are long. Do not be like them. Your Father already knows what you need before you ask him. This then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, may your holy name be honoured. May your kingdom come. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today the food we need. Forgive us the wrongs we have done, as we forgive the wrongs that others have done to us. Do not bring us to hard testing, but keep us safe from the evil one. If you forgive others the wrongs they have done to you, your Father in heaven will also forgive you. But if you don't forgive others, then your Father will not forgive the wrongs that you have done. Verses 19 to 21, sort of the second section. Do not store up riches for yourselves here on earth, where moths and rust destroy, and robbers break in and steal. Instead, store up riches for yourself in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy, and robbers cannot break in and steal. For your heart will always be... Next one. Okay, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to carry on with Undaunted, 31 to 34. So do not start worrying, where will my food come from, or my drink, or my clothes? These are the things the pagans are always concerned about. Your Father in heaven knows that you need all these things. Instead, be concerned about everything else with the kingdom of God and with what he requires of you, and he will provide you with all these other things. So do not worry about tomorrow. It will have enough worries of its own. There is no need to add to the troubles each day brings. I gave away a pair of shoes once. Yes, I did. Thanks, Peter. Actually, you're tangentially involved in this, actually, come to think of it. I'd only bought them a few hours earlier in the January sales in New York. And I loved them when I bought them. But that was before I found the Timberland Chelsea boots and the mid-cut leather sneakers and those perfect black lace-up boots that I also bought. If I remember rightly, Kelly only knew about a couple of them. So I probably looked pretty generous when I gave the homeless guy in the West Village those new shoes. But I'd just seen a truly beautiful pair of nubuck boots just down the road, and I loved them even more than everything else. And so I went and bought them, and I just thought, I can't get found out buying 6 pairs of shoes. So I gave one pair away. It happened to be a homeless guy. If I'm honest, it could have been anybody. I just had to get rid of them. I had to get rid of the evidence. But I wasn't in Jerusalem, so Jesus wasn't there to point out my hypocrisy to his friends. There's these 2 things that I think, in my words, that Jesus is challenging us with. And the first one is the 500 likes syndrome, which I called it. I coin that phrase. You can use it if you like. See, there's this big emphasis on hypocrisy, which is about the contrivance of a false appearance or a false virtue while concealing real character or inclinations. So it involves pretense, a bit of a sham. Note that I'm, by the way, doing the right thing when I give away the shoes. It's not a bad thing, right? The guy probably needed them and they fitted him. I took the time to work that out. Hi, what's your name? John. Hi, John. Nice to meet you. How do these shoes? Well, they fit you. Awesome. Good. That's great. Anybody watching? Great. Awesome. Good. But it was a good thing to do. So nothing wrong with doing that. But it was a false appearance of virtue. It was actually concealing the real inclination. So Jesus even talked about virtue signalling, which I think is interesting. He really did. It's a big deal at the moment, virtue signalling. Somebody said to me the other night, one of the students said to me the other night in class, "You're victim blaming." And I said, "You're virtue signalling." So I think I won, I'm not sure. I'm not positive. But remember, I've just been watching Q&A. So there is a leftist kind of thing happening on me at the moment. So I'm helping others because I'm supposed to do it, but I'm really wanting to be noticed and celebrated, right? This is in the story. I had my own reason, but regardless of the reason, if it's not a virtuous reason, let's not kid ourselves, we're just doing the same stuff. And it's a challenge to me because I think I do this a fair bit when I really consider it. I'm praying because I know I'm supposed to, but really I'm wanting to be seen as a spiritual person. I'm acting a part so that I get the 500 likes. Look, I got onto Facebook just like everybody. I don't know, it was years ago, wasn't it, when it first started? And I was a middle-aged minister. And not a lot of people realised that. They thought I was a young minister. I know that, I understand that, but that's a burden that I've had to bear. In fact, quite the reverse. I remember one time somebody came into our business and went up to see Kelly. I was down at the back of our big business shed area, and the guy went up to the front and said to Kelly, "I've just been talking to your father." So quite the reverse, but anyway, I remember the whole Facebook deal, and I remember that I would be looking for things to post so I'd get likes. Now, I was, 48 or something years old at the time. I'm 59 now. I don't know what it was, how many years ago when it sort of first happened. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Josh. That's awesome. But you know what? I did it all the time. I wasn't posting because I thought something was interesting or informative, or I just want to let people know what I was doing. Now, those were things I was doing. Yeah, I wanted to be interesting. I wanted to be informative. I wanted to let people overseas know that I was what I was doing. But there was an underlying motivation, which was likes. It was to be seen, right? And if I do get 500 likes, that's cool. But that's the only reward you're going to get, using Jesus' words, right? That's the only thing. So you'll get a reward. It's just not like you won't get a reward, but you won't get the deep, resonant joy that is promised with the hope of God. But we'll get a reward, It's a shallow desire. It'll reap a shallow reward. Now, please, you realise I'm talking to me, right? And I'm not having to go at Facebook. I'm just trying to make a parallel. I'm just saying this is the challenge. Jesus in Palestine 2,000 years ago is using what's in front of him to challenge the people that are following him about what is it that they love, is what I would suggest. Because you eventually become what you love, which he goes on to say. Or let's say that what you love deeply affects who you are, what you actually love. So it's really important for us to disentangle that, and spend some time disentangling what it is that we really are desiring, what it is that we really love. And I would suggest to you that half the time I don't know. If I'm going to get what I love, I've got to, what do I love? I don't know. It's probably what I put time into, we'll read in a minute, where my heart is, there my treasure is. The second clever syndrome that I want to use as I look through my psychology texts is which I don't have, the missing out syndrome. So in the second section, when he's talking ostensibly about money, Jesus likens slavery to worrying unduly about what your future prospects and plans are, right? Don't be a slave to financial worry. Not that you shouldn't hope for prospects and make financial plans, by the way, but there is an unhealthy and a healthy perspective, you know? And it really, really does annoy me sometimes, talking about virtue signalling, when people seem to want to make people who are doing okay financially feel bad about it. It's absurd. Jesus, that's not what he's talking about in the slightest. But it's saying, you know, don't spend your life worrying about your prospects. Don't spend your life worrying about your prospects. Because as the pagans do that, because they're buying into a certain culture, which we'll talk about in a sec. When is enough enough? And when will I think I'm not missing out? It's kind of one aspect of greed, but it's really insecurity filled by a lack of trust, isn't it? Don't you reckon? It's really just an insecurity that's fueled by a lack of trust. You know, when am I know that I'm not missing out? Now, I think I can say that because I go on. Now, I'm being honest here. I'm not preaching. I'm being honest. I go on shopping binges. I don't spend a lot of money. Interesting theme, by the way, that's running through my shopping binges is Kelly's usually not around. Interestingly, I don't know if there's a correlation there, but so lately I've been on a bit of a shopping binge because there's these great sales at the moment, you know, with Oxford and with different, just really good Fossil. There's some really great, I'm not talking about myself, it's a shop. The Fossil, I go in to get a band for my other watch that I bought at Fossil because it looked a little bit tatty. I noticed that the band was $79, but these are on special. So you buy another watch, of course. And then as I walked out of the shop, I thought, hold on, I can buy a band and I've got 2 watches. So I did. And so then I gave the second watch to my middle son. To my youngest son. Because I wanted to bless him. Or I wanted to offload the second watch so that when Kelly comes home, I'll have some sort of a tenuous excuse. This jumper, well, I've lost weight. So why wouldn't I go buy a jumper? The fact that I bought 3 jumpers, there was a special on for 2 pairs of pants. Well, there was. And then I went back to buy another set of 2, and I noticed these other ones. When am I not missing out? Now, you know, I mean, that's just me, right? But you have your own stuff. And it's just this culture that we live in. I'm blaming the culture, not me. It may be that the 2 sections of chapter 6, are about challenging us about what we love and trust. What do I love? Who do I trust? In both sections, we really risk being dictated to by the values that are not virtuous. That's why I'm saying that I think this chapter, and of course the sermon, really is about formation. It's about spiritual formation. It's about Christian formation. And it nails me constantly. In both, there's this disconnect between our actions and our motivations, right? We're potentially doing good stuff, but it lacks a wholeheartedness. It makes what we do limited. It's not all it could be. And as a result, we're not all we could be. See, I don't think Jesus is being reductionist here. I think he's saying that to be a fulfilled person, to live a fulfilled Christian life, takes heart and soul and body. So you understand what I'm saying? Let me say it again in a different way. I don't think Jesus is having a big go at people who are praying. I don't think he's having a go at people who are considering their finances. I think what he's saying is that Christian life, Christian formation, is so much more than this narrow band. That is much bigger. That if you spend your time worrying about your prospects, not that you shouldn't worry about the prospects, but you're missing a big part of life, that you're reducing life to so much less than it could be. And I say me, I'm saying you, but I mean me. That if I just help people because I think I have to, or because I've got some other motive happening, it's not that I'm being terrible, but I'm missing a fullness that can come. We can live a full life. We can actually have a full-orbed life on this earth. I think that's what he's wanting to challenge us about. Well, in Matthew 6, as I read it, that's what I'm challenged about. I think we've kind of reduced ourselves. We've gone for black and white when we could go for colours. We miss the real opportunities presented and we'll take second best. So we get the rewards from the system that we're playing in, and we miss out on the reward of living a full-orbed life, a life that's about so much more. So I do think it's about what we love, what we desire, what do I want? Because I think we do become what we love. And one of the things I think that I miss as a Christian, because my Christianity was very experiential when I became a Christian at 21. It was a huge encounter, magnificent, and it's, wow, those encounters are so fabulous. But I actually think that the stuff that we're talking about this morning, I think it's actually more about habits. I think we form habits that form us. Acquired ways of being over time that become second nature to us. Our desires and longings and loves are heart habits, formation. I think so. I think that's why the Christian faith and others have formative habits. Embodied habits, actually. When we come to the table later on at the end of the service, where it's a habit, right? But it's a formative habit. And as it forms us as we partake in it. And Christianity has several key ones of these, and I'll just mention them in a few minutes. But I think that if I'm honest, unconsciously I'm being formed by rituals and routines, affirmations and negations, rewards and punishments that I'm mostly unaware of. They form my heart and they form what I love, what I desire, what I long for, and then I act out of these formations. And I think that the subjects of Jesus' stories have been formed, mostly unconsciously, by a vast range of embodied practices that attach value and recognition to certain ways of being in the world. I wrote that down because I thought it was the way I was thinking. So I wanted to get it clear. What you love and who you are formed by practices and liturgies, Christian and not, usually by the culture in which we exist. So I go to a shopping mall, or I watch the television, or I'm online. I swipe on my smartphone. These are all liturgical. So go with me for a minute on this. Just be aware of it. When we go to a shopping mall, like a big shopping mall, or a small one, we're being formed. We are. So, oh, that's terrible. Are you saying it's terrible? No, I'm just saying it's what it is. It's what it is. Of course we are. Because, see, we're humans. And too often we try to say there's the spirit and then there's the flesh, and these two are completely divided, right? No, we're together, spirit, soul, body, if you like. Heart, mind, body. We're one. We only divide them up so we can sort of define them, but it's actually not very helpful. The reality is we are formed as individuals, heart, mind and body, by the liturgies, by the habits, by the culture in which we live. It's one of the reasons why, for some good reasons and then some really rotten reasons, many Christian organisations say, stay out of the world, stay away from those naughty people, not realising that they're also part of the naughty people, which is where the thing falls apart. But, there's truth in it. There's truth in it. It's like you will be affected. When I was a youth leader, I don't know how many times did I say to my young people, be careful who you hang around. If you've been a youth leader or been in a youth group, you've heard that, right? Like there's truth in it. There's absolute truth in it. But we can take it too far, then it becomes silly and it becomes these big boundary walls around people. And the problem with that whole deal, by the way, is it forgets that the same fracture that we see in the world is in us. That's a bit of an aside. Nevertheless, there's truth in this. We go to a shopping mall and it has been set up to form you into a consumer. It works on me. I've just proved it. I get emails every few days from different companies, only a couple of them, right? Not that many, so don't get too worried about me. And when there's a special on, or when there's I got a $30 Easter bonus. Oh, I did. So I used it, right? I mean, you could argue, Josh, that I used it on something I didn't need. But I think 6 pairs of chinos allows you to be diverse and yet individual and yet not. We are formed. It's very deliberate. Political parties, shop owners, you and me, we all know this is true. This is not evil. It's recognition of how we as humans are made up, how we're wired up. One of the things that I think has been a bit sad with the evangelical church, of which we are part of, so it's not a big critique, but we have thrown away a lot of the formative practices, not realising how flippant important they are. We've just branded them dead or something, dead works. And I could give you a spiritual history of this if you like, but it would be boring coming from the Reformation and responding, to the Catholicism of the time, etc., etc., etc. But what we ended up doing was we chucked out anything that looks remotely in the slightest like we're doing works. But we've got to do works. You can't, this is this binary, this duality all the time. It's that, we don't do works, but then James says we do works out of our faith. Don't divide them. We're holistic people, and we are formed by the culture. We're actually formed by what we give ourselves to. And whether we do that without knowing it or we do it with knowing it, we're formed by the culture that we give ourselves to. Now, I'm saying that kind of authoritatively, I know, and I'm just speaking out of my own life, right? I'm not a psychologist. I'm a minister. But it's what I see in Scripture. It's what I see in real life. And I think it's at least partly what Jesus is challenging us about. Okay, I need to hurry up. We're singing the songs of our culture rather than singing the songs of Zion sometimes. A rival liturgy has captured my heart that says I'm the centre of the universe and probably should be the centre of attention. So, what do we do? This is a couple of my opinions. Take a liturgical audit. So what are the rhythms and rituals and practices you give yourself over to? What are the things you do that do something to you? What story about human flourishing am I giving myself to? And I do laugh because I'm a genuine follower of Christ. Right? I'm genuine. I'm as genuine as anybody else in the room. And yet, I really have bought 5 pairs of chinos in the last 2 weeks. And one of them were lilac colour. And I hardly ever go to Mount Lawley after midnight. Almost never. Yeah, once or twice, but it's just been a long time since I got followed. So the first thing is do a bit of an audit. Just take some time, but without being judgmental. The thing is that the problem with me even saying stuff like this, and we're fortunate at Westcity because hopefully we haven't bought into that, that us and them narrative that, everything's bad somehow narrative, because that's not true. We need to be more nuanced than that in our lives. Nevertheless, we could take some time to do this kind of an audit. And the second thing, which I was just going to mention quickly, oh, that's right, I didn't put it on. Okay. So leave that. I'll just say it. I've got reform. Forgot to put slide in. So to do some reforming. So the answer isn't to opt out of culture, but to be formed by a countercultural narrative that doesn't demonise, rather it lifts up what is good and sidelines what isn't. That's all. So it's not rocket science. Because we're in this either-or thing. Look at the election campaign we just had, right? It's like either or, black, white. Right? It's like, yeah, how childish is that? So that's the election campaign, but let's not be childish in our lives. It's not either or. It's a matter of, there's nothing demonic about a shopping mall, but it has effects. There's nothing demonic about an iPhone. There's nothing demonic about Facebook. There isn't. But everything has an effect on our mind, on our heart, on our body, because we're full people. We're fully orbed people. And it's really unhelpful, I think. At worst, it's called Gnosticism, but it's really unhelpful when we as Christians try to divide it all up as though that the heart, we have the heart, the spirit, and that the body and the mind are somehow, disconnected. They're not. They're not disconnected. We are connected. So reform. Well, how do you reform? Well, again, I don't think it's that, prayer, communion, baptism, being in a community of faith, activism, standing up for justice. They're ways that we can reform with a counterculture, because our loves and our desires will be formed. They will be formed in us. It's we as individuals and we as a community. All too often that's in our hyper-individualistic society, and there's a strong history to this, and we are individuals, right? But we're individuals in community. I have to say this to myself all the time because I want to be an individual without a community. I don't know what you're like. Some of you are not like that, I know. I want to be an individual without community. I want to run on my own, think on my own, watch TV on my own, watch movies on my own. I want to do it on my own and then occasionally catch people. Right? The problem is that is dangerous when it comes to formation. Because I am going to be formed, so it makes good sense to be formed in a community of faith. Final thing. Just a quote from Thomas Aquinas. I mentioned it the first night of our Thursday night discussion group. And he said, in his 11th century language, we are made partakers of the divine nature by participation as kindled wood partakes of the nature of fire, and thus, after a fashion, man becomes a partaker of the divine nature. By participation. So how are we formed? By participation. As kindled wood partakes of the nature of fire. By participation. So let's forget this nonsense that divides the spiritual up from the embodied life that we live, because it is just nonsense. And let's understand that we are formed. The worry that you have in your heart, why aren't my desires as godly as I want them to be? Part of the answer, at least, is that we've divided up spirit, soul and body in some weird way, rather than get in and get involved and partake. Have you not been baptised yet? Think it through. Be baptised. Talk to Phil. He's a tall guy standing at the back there. Do you come to a house church? Well, if you don't, maybe it's something to consider, to be in that direct community of faith. Have you got some prayer program? Maybe you could find a prayer program. That would be really helpful to you. Is there some activistic thing that you could be involved with? Something that you can put your heart into as a Christian. Whatever it might be. Maybe do that. Just do one thing even. But make it holistic. Heart, mind and body. Okay. There's my challenge to myself this morning. In the house churches, I suggest you read that Matthew 6, and I know Richard will find some terrific questions to consider. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm handing over to you, I guess, Phil. Cool.
Each week at Westcity, we are sent out to be the church in the world. We do this by declaring the following benediction. May you know God's enabling as you join us in living it out. We come together as the church to be reminded of the go of Christ. So go and feed the hungry. Go and clothe the naked. Go and fight for justice. Go and end oppression. Go and proclaim anew the old story. Go and reach those who are running from God and God's church. Go and associate with those who don't look like us, think like us, act like us, or even like us. And do it all in the name of the one who sent us. His name is Jesus.